I think missing quota my second month was probably the best thing that could have happened to me because it was 2025. It's not a bad life. If you could put yourself in a spot where you're making six figures in a remote environment, if you explain to your great grandmother or grandfather, they'd probably be stunned at your quality of life. Really, really badass life. I lost a lot of clients. I lost SDRs. I made a ton of mishires. Even when you do everything right, you still end up getting rocked. You need to always be hiring because once you drop your guard, that's when the sales gods punish you and your top performer leaves.
Welcome back to another episode of the SDR Hire podcast. And so if you're new here, my name is Stefan, and this is a place where top producing salespeople share what it's like working in tech sales, building out tech sales teams, getting hired, hiring, anything you can think of about sales, SDRs, account executives, setters, closers, you name it. And today I'm joined by Joey Trapasso, who conveniently goes by Joey Bones. And Joey is actually someone whose career started at MemoryBlue, which is the second time that we have somebody from that company. Those guys are printing killers. And he kind of defined that like growing from the trenches, right? He started as an SDR back in 2018, moved up through sales management, and then went on to actually build and lead MemoryBlue's entire client recruitment services division. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how he scaled that and basically 3x that part of the business over a course, I think, of like a year, 2 years, something like that. And obviously he entered his currently new role where he's kind of building out the things from scratch, going straight back to the trenches. And so without further ado, Joey, man, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. I'm super pumped up.
Dude, how does one get the nickname Bones?
Well, I think that was one of the fun parts of MemoryBlue. When I started, there was 7 Joeys, and they were like, you got to have a nickname or something. Otherwise, you got to be Joseph or Joe. And I was like, oh, that's a fate worse than death. So I told them in college my nickname was Bones, and they just kind of ran with it. And perks of having been there 7 years, by the end, it was in my email, it was in my teams. So it was really fun. And I'm glad it's carried over to the new place too, where all the leadership calls me Bones. I've got it on the LinkedIn. So it's fun. Still confuses my parents, but it is.
Oh, I can imagine. And you actually mentioned something very interesting, which is you stayed with MemoryBlue for 7 years. Now, that's not something you see very often these days, because especially SDRs, they usually like look for opportunities for growth, and then they kind of jump on the next opportunity for like 10 or 20K salary bump, which, by the way, I'm not judging. I'm just saying that's usually what we see these days. What kind of kept you there for so long?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because the average tenure of a tech sales, I think just rep, is about a year and a half. Yeah. So I became an anomaly, especially at a place like MemoryBlue, where the whole model is come here and potentially get hired out by your client, which I ultimately ended up doing 7 years later. I think the first part is leadership. When I left, I was the second most tenured employee at the company. The first actually was my manager when I first started. He was incredible. So I think it's one of those things where when you recognize, all right, I have a great leader, and his name's Jeremy Wood, it becomes a lot easier to stay when you feel like you're learning and developing. You have a fair quota that you're hitting and exceeding. You have an advocate there. And I think most importantly in the SDR role, I feel like your job as a manager, which I ended up becoming, is helping folks get out of there. It's a means to an end. Get in, accomplish what you need to accomplish, learn what you need to learn to go to the next level, whatever role that might be. For me, it was SDR manager. I was president of my fraternity. I liked the idea of leadership. So he helped mold me and make me really the no-brainer, I think, into becoming the next SDR manager over there. So when you look at 7 years, I laugh sometimes because it's like, well, it's kind of a year as an SDR, year and a half as a manager, and then we'll get into everything else that I did there. But that's sort of how it became spaced out like that. So leadership, and then obviously it was a lot of fun too. President's Club. When I moved to the area, I didn't know anyone. So a lot of my social circle actually became through that company.
Interesting. And essentially there are three eras, let's put it like that, in your MemoryBlue career, at least from what I can tell from LinkedIn, right? There was the SDR era, and then there was the management era, and then there was the recruitment arm era. And so what would you say were like highlights of each?
Well, I think starting with the SDR level, there was a few. I think missing quota my second month was probably the best thing that could have happened to me because it was humbling. I came in, hit it my first month. I was like, this is easy. You don't actually even need to sell anything. You're just generating interest. Anyone can do that. And many people can do that on a reduced ramping quota. Going into month two, where my quota was 8 meetings set with cybersecurity personas, I think I booked 18 or 19 meetings and only about 6 showed up. So my hold rate was an abysmal 33%, and I missed. And it really forced me to self-reflect and really lock in and be like, all right, I know I can do this, but I've got to really pay attention to the details and make this happen. That ended up being the only month that I missed. And I think it brought me to my peak, which was the company-wide March Madness competition. It's funny, you had Bo Verbas on, who actually won it as a manager. Back in my day, it was actually an individual competition, back when the company was a little bit smaller. So you had to qualify to get in. Once you were in, it was full March Madness style with 64 folks. And if you won, the grand prize was 3 $500 Visa gift cards. So no taxes, which was great. So it was a clean $1,500. And I ended up powering through that. It's funny to see where those folks have gone along the way. A couple are now, AEs at Salesforce and other successful tech companies, but was able to win that, which was definitely the proudest accomplishment there.
Well played. And for sure, I mean, it sounds like the MemoryBlue as a company like fosters that healthy competition, and it actually seems to be generating a lot of very successful salespeople. I mean, having talked to Bo, he shared how he's managing his teams and how he's making sure that they are actually hitting their quotas, and that was super impressive. Like they're like a Swiss clock, like everything is in a minute, and so it seems like that's across the board. All right, and so after March Madness, it seems like you transitioned into, at some point at least, to an SDR manager. How did things change, and what were some kind of challenges, and then what were the highlights?
Yeah, definitely another reality check. And it's funny, it's the realization all new managers go through, I think, especially ones that were top performers as an individual contributor. You learn very quickly not everyone is wired the same way you are. And, just like any new management position, you're inheriting some form of team. And it's typically not the team that you envisioned and dreamed of when you became a manager. It's, no one's first coaching job is coach of the New England Patriots. You have to start somewhere, and you're not getting the best clients and oftentimes not the best people. But I think that's really, and maybe I'm biased because that's how I started out, but there's a lot of studies that show common denominators of top performers in any space, in any industry, are often linked to starting at a tough time, whether it be in a recession or just difficult situation, because it forces you to only do things the right way because you don't get bailed out. And, if you're in an easier situation, you could do things the wrong way and still have the right outcome, develop bad habits. But boy, oh boy, when you're in a tough situation, even when you do everything right, you still end up getting rocked. Which is what happened to me often. I lost a lot of clients. I lost SDRs. I made a ton of mishires. There was a point where my manager was like, all right, you're no longer allowed to hire without me talking to this person too. It was comical. when I thought I was going to step in and be like, well, as the top SDR, I'll definitely be the top manager. And no, not even close. And it took probably about a year before I would consider myself actually good in the role. And that's what is nice about a MemoryBlue, where they allow you to make mistakes that can cost the company tens of thousands of dollars to get to that level of like, all right, I've got these battle scars. I'm going to try to avoid making the same mistake twice. I already made all these mistakes. Are they all out of my system? Maybe now I can start executing at a high level.
It seems like you have a nice ability to self-reflect, at least after a while. But you said it took a year for you to actually feel like you're actually good in the role. Some other people would have potentially left even before that because ego and best and stuff like that. So kudos to you, man. That's kind of you stuck through it, and it seems like it paid off. Because looking at what happened next, you essentially got a chance to. How did that happen, by the way? How did you get that chance to transition to like building out the contingency sales recruiting division?
That's a great question. My claim to fame as an SDR manager was I was responsible for the largest upsell in company history. Essentially, I took a client that was on a pay-per-meeting structure, and they had bought 10 meetings, and they were like, all right, see what you could do with these. Here's $1,000 a meeting, $10,000, see what you can do. I had a lot of bandwidth because I wasn't trusted with a high number of clients because I kept losing them. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna channel my inner SDR. I'm going to make this work. Typically, the more tenured managers didn't want campaigns like that. It was, 10 meetings. You want, the retained clients. So I said, I'm going to make this happen. Occurred the 10 meetings pretty quickly. I think about 5 or 6 turned into opportunities. They said, this is great. Let's buy another 30. They bought another 30. Next thing you know, the company gets its Series B funding. And they say, hey, Bones, this is great. We don't want to have this function in-house. We want it to go fully through you all. We have 10 AEs. We want 3 SDRs supporting each AE. I'm like, holy cow.
Oh my God.
Okay. That's a great ratio for the AEs. They're like, yep, tell us what it costs. Let's do it. Let's keep it rolling. So next thing you know, I go from having a small team that I can't really be trusted with anything, bodging things, to having the largest client in the company. Scared the crap out of my manager. But so I managed the 30 SDR campaign for about a year and a half. The company ended up being acquired, which was awesome. I had some help from some other managers as well throughout. But that was where I really cut my teeth, had to get creative, brought out my entrepreneurial side because you're really making up things as you go. But that was great. So this is at the peak of COVID, low interest rates friendly to startups, the typical base of MemoryBlue. So MemoryBlue is exploding. They're looking for other revenue lines. The same way companies need to outsource the SDR function, many need to outsource the recruiting function as well. Our co-founders realized that, tapped me on the shoulder. I said no a couple of times because I did not view myself as a recruiter. Thought that was kind of the R word. And they just, pretty much were like, come on, like, what's the worst that happens? So I said, all right, whatever, I'll do it. And it ended up being a ton of fun, and where I ended up spending the majority of my tenure over there.
For sure. Wow. You essentially broke into an account and expanded it into like a small company, essentially, because getting to 30 people from like, I don't know how many you had, couple, 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane, man. That's really crazy. I can't even imagine what that must have looked like.
Chaos.
how How long did it take you to fill those 30 spots and like get people ramped and like, because I can assume from what I understand, it seems like every manager has their own clients and their own, like, and you're essentially responsible for those clients, right? And so
Yep.
you can upsell them, you build out those campaigns, you staff people on those accounts, you train the people, right? Is everything on your plate?
Yep. Now with this particular campaign, I only directly managed 15 and I
Hmm.
had three other managers each overseeing five, but
Hmm.
I was the head of the campaign, obviously, and the point of contact for the client. But staffing that thing was a mess
Yeah.
because it's tempting because it's like, oh, there's 30, there's more places to hide, quote unquote,
Uh-huh.
versus if you're only one person, spotlight's on you. But I'm seeing it also as this is my baby.
Yeah.
There is nowhere like I need excellence. So with the natural churn of not just SDR roles, entry level SDRs, that much more. We hire off of, oh, you were a student athlete and you went door to door for a local political campaign. Awesome. That's
Yeah.
typically like an A profile. Now,
Yeah.
how is that person going to respond when they're asked to make 100 calls a day for some HR software at 22 years old with who knows what's going on in their head? It is a crapshoot. And MemoryBlue does it at a really, really successful rate, but it's hard. So the turnover was a beast. The ramp, it was hard and it was constantly moving. And that's where I learned you need to always be hiring because once you drop your guard, that's
Mm.
when the sales gods punish you and your top performer leaves. It's
Yeah.
never the one you're expecting either. So yeah, that was a doozy.
What was the toughest part managing that account? Like what was,
Uh,
like, did they give you a hard time because of the turnover, or did they expect that? Like, did you practically, communicate that?
yeah, I think a couple of things. Communication. They were really great to work with because they were very smart people and they were reasonable as long as things were communicated. And I think that's kind of most smart people. They don't like surprises. So I think the temptation is to not bring things up sometimes until it happens. And a lot of just like hoping and crossing your fingers versus articulating things where you can tell them, hey, this person isn't on a PIP yet, but if they occur less than 6 meetings, I will be rolling out a performance plan. Hey, this person's heating up a bit. They're coming up on the year and a half mark. They may start looking for other opportunities. Here's the vibes I'm getting. Here's what I'm doing instead. So that constant communication so that they don't have to ask. And that's, I guess the word is managing up. But I think your job as a manager, especially middle management, is to make your manager's job easier or your
Mm.
client's job easier. And it's to show them that you're on top of it and being very data driven and getting out in front of the bad numbers. So if you're sending a report, you're not just hoping, oh, I hope they don't ask about like that low number in tab C. It's, hey, as you notice, tab C here, this is 30% lower than expectations. Here's the plan that I'm installing next week to change that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that, and I've made that mistake so many times. I've been in the agency, like service based business world, for the last 4 years, and too many times have I not communicated that properly, just because I was like, it's probably going to be okay, even if it doesn't. Yeah, they're going to be fine. They trust me, and that is true until they don't anymore, and then that's gone. And obviously, at the level that you guys were or are playing at, considering Memory Blue, like, there aren't really a lot of places to make mistakes, especially running a, I don't know, $300,000 a month account or something like that. I'm not sure what that number comes to, but like that's super important to do, and to like kind of manage. So, sorry, I before we jumped into recruitment, I just, I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that
No,
account. Did you?
of course. And to answer your question, to the hardest part, funny enough, the territories. And
In what sense?
I it's when something's that big, I think every mistake is exploited.
Hmm.
Creating fair territories is hard. And
Right.
I tried everything, alphabetical, industries, but green, because you can't greenfield with that many people. And that I think was one of the more valuable lessons going through there because it needs to be fair. And I think from my experience in management, when reps don't identify a situation as fair, that's when the most anger and just really losing hope and just checking out comes into play. And that was really, really hard. And I still don't have a definitive way of doing it. Right? You do territories, you give someone AI, but what if the AI is also in manufacturing? Who does that? Where does that lead go? Hey, that's my lead, and that was hard. Or telecommunications isn't as big as you think it is. Pennsylvania doesn't have as many businesses as you realize. New Mexico doesn't have any. Like that was hard, and I
And
talked to a
did
lot of managers about that and what to do. That there isn't an answer. And I think that's where embracing the role of middle manager, and you just have to watch your folks list build, see who's there, what sort of names are they seeing? Did they run out? Reward top performers with more territory. But it's something you have to constantly manage because it's different for every SDR org. But if you brush off folks when they say they don't have enough accounts or territory and they actually don't, they're going to leave
yeah.
because there actually isn't anything you can do. And the SDR role is hard enough. But when you come in on a Tuesday like this and you're looking at your names and you can only make calls sixes and sevens because there's no one else to build out, that makes a really hard job more or less impossible.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Did the reps have the same quotas across different territories?
Yes, because it
Yeah,
was hard to say, yeah, manufacturing's easier than telecommunications or
yeah,
retail.
yeah.
We had an ABM campaign within it. So five of the SDRs were dedicated to an ABM approach to bring in some strategic accounts. Those were lower. They were at 4 a month and had different expectations. But yeah, the other 25 were all the same.
No, I'm just imagining that amount of like juggling because it literally is a shit show where, and I remember from the management days where like, oh, I mean, even today, like, oh, I don't have enough. I have too many. These guys they have it way easier. Their leads are closing more easily. Nobody books, on a Friday. Europe is terrible, stuff like that. And yeah, I can't remember. We didn't even have a good like way of like distributing the territory. So and at that volume, it's probably even harder. So good for you, man. I mean, I bet those were some interesting scars you got there from like managing that stuff.
Oh yeah, and you want to believe people, but then
Yeah,
you give them more states just to realize that their territory was actually big enough, and you neglected the person who did need new states because they weren't complaining enough. Yeah, that that sucked, and
yeah.
yeah.
Were you relieved when you stepped into the recruitment business part?
um, I I was, but I didn't expect to be. I think I was so lost in the sauce because I'd grown it to the top of what it was, but the timing kind of worked out because they had been acquired. And I was like, all right, this is kind of mission successful. But then you're
Yeah.
going through that. How do we survive this acquisition? We have to prove our value now to
Yep.
this new company. They have an internal SDR org. The the company vouched for us, and we're like, no, we want to keep this function, but new point of contacts, proving everything, which obviously becomes exhausting. So I think it kind of like the timing was good. And yeah, I went from those 30 folks to a team of 4. That was a new division, but it was nice being able to take a deep breath and not be a firefighter anymore and actually be able to work on strategic, creative things to build that out.
That's interesting. What did you do first? Like, did you have the 4 people team right off the bat, or were you like solo?
Yeah. I came into a existing team of 4. They were hired like a month before
Mhm.
me. So I came in there and it was nice. And this is where I learned it's very appealing to come into awesome situations where everything's perfect and you just have to come in and do your thing. But it's hard to improve situations like that at the same time because
Mm.
they're already going so well. It's kind of like Weber's law where people only see contrast. If things are going really well and you come in and keep it going really well, it doesn't really look like you did anything. Now you're doing your job, but that's also the expectation. What I came into was really a mess, and I don't think outside of the concept of we want to do this recruiting function, there was really a plan. But the overlap was incredible, and I really compare inside sales and recruiting as cousins. So I was able to come in and install some really simple processes, one-on-ones, standardized rollout when there is a new client, weekly trainings, and very fundamental
Yeah.
things for a manager. But when the status quo was, half the team doesn't even know if a new client came in, you look really smart. So that was the first thing, creating those processes, and then also trying to wrap my head around things because I'd never recruited. I had hired 100 SDRs or so, or interviewed a couple hundred, but I wasn't necessarily a recruiter, nor was my team. The whole premise of the division was SDRs finding SDR, salespeople finding salespeople. So we sort of had to learn together, which was a really cool experience.
That's very interesting. So I keep comparing. Whenever I take on something new, I put this very heavy weight on myself where I need to be perfect or I'm not cut out for something like that. And it seems like, you were grounded enough to realize that, okay, I don't know enough about this. Let me learn and then get things going. So how long did it take you because looking at here, like it took you like you ended up recruiting over 700 people, placing them, etc., and you built a team of 26 people. Like you went from 4 and hired another like 21, 22 people. Obviously there must have been more. So how did that like happen? How did you grow into that new role? I can assume your previous experience actually helped a lot and gave you the confidence, but like, what were some I don't know, like stepping stones or struggles that you had to overcome?
Yeah, you definitely have to get into the trenches.
Mm.
A lot of managers, unfortunately, view management as a way out. They stumble into technology sales. They're like, oh, wow, I was a marketing major with no real direction. Got this SDR role at this tech company. Don't really like sales, but I did well. Oh, look, they're hiring a manager for a $90,000 base. That's a lot of money. And if my team hits goal, I can make $130,000. That's
Yeah.
not a bad life. And they get into management as a way out of cold calling for a living, which is a really hard way to make a living.
Yeah.
And they nestle into a middle management role and they view that as their job versus sort of how I viewed it is I liked leadership and I loved this technology sales industry of, oh my God, I could work in air conditioning all day, sit down, call a few people and like they'll give me over $100,000. This is crazy. I want more people who don't know this exists to find this and do this because it could change their life. And not forgetting once you become a manager what got you there and getting into the trenches. That was my special sauce as an SDR manager. I always called. It's like a chef trying his food, I compared it to. If you're
Yeah.
rolling out new messaging, how are you going to know it's going to work? It's like a new recipe. You're going to call with them and see how it sounds. It might read one way, but on a cold call, it might sound totally different.
Yeah.
And in this age where I feel like everything goes stale so much quicker, especially now. When I was an SDR, a good subject line would normally be fresh for like 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
I feel like every month now it's, oh, yeah, that got me quota last month, but now no one's opening that. The word's out on that subject line. And back to Weber's law, where you have to just really zig when everyone's zagging and be different. It's exhausting keeping up with all of that, which is why I think you need to stay in the trenches and identify that, because that is your job as a manager. You're responsible for the messaging. So I had the stamina when I came in to this sales recruitment org of overseeing that 30-person SDR team. And when there was only 4 folks I was managing, I felt like I had so much time to manage these people, roll out processes, but also do a good bit of the job to get a feel of what their challenges were and how I could improve it, which I think helped me gain credibility with the team. And when I made those mistakes and whatnot, it wasn't like, oh, my manager's dumb, he like is messing up. It's, oh no, he's one of us and he's not afraid to make these mistakes, which also makes me more, it makes me feel more free to try something new, and I'm not afraid to make a mistake, so no one's playing tense. And it's like, hey, this is sales, we're all trying new things. Guess what? If you mess up a call, you can go to the next one. But if we keep trying new things, we'll eventually hit gold, and then that'll get us through until we have to find something new.
So what you're saying is, like, the secret to your sauce was essentially just putting your head down and being in the trenches with the team and just testing things out until they worked, literally.
Yeah. And I think that goes with any team, and for new managers, I think you have to accept, just because you were told you're this person's manager doesn't mean they're necessarily going to respect you. You have to earn that in every level, at every position. And it's continuous too. It could take 6 months to get it, and then it could take a day to lose it. You have to re-earn it.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, I can see your passion for sales and how you literally described the difference between like a non-sales oriented person who's just in tech, but like not really in love with selling. And then the actual, like the salespeople who enjoy the conversation, who enjoy picking up the phone and having a conversation with somebody. Honestly, like for me, it took me a while to kind of become that person, honestly. But you know, just discovering the potential of what you can do with sales jobs in general, like that's just beautiful. Anyway, I'm curious, what, like, did you sell the recruitment services into the existing accounts, so help existing clients kind of hire on the reps that they already had on their accounts, or were you just hunting for new business, like a completely separate function to MemoryBlue's like regular SDR outsourcing services?
It was a good mix. There was the fear internally that our services would cannibalize the main organization's offerings of, why would I outsource my SDRs if I could work with Bones' team and he can find me 6 external people, which is, maybe a little warranted, but there was always that push because a lot of our hires were account executives. And there was a ton of success stories where my team would take an existing client who was outsourcing their SDRs and help them hire awesome account executives to close the leads that the MemoryBlue SDRs were bringing them. So it was a mix of that, and then also going out, finding external companies that were hiring. Darktrace was our biggest success story, where we hit them right after their IPO, and they were using a couple other agencies. We ended up becoming their dedicated partner and helping them hire over 200 SDRs and AEs, and that was an incredible experience. And that's really sales. You create your own luck. Sure, there was a ton of luck there, but right place, right time, doing the right things, and now all of a sudden you have this massive client.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what time period was those 200 people over?
I want to say June 2022, maybe 2021 to roughly January 2023,
Oh, well, that's
2024.
not too long of a period.
Yeah, about two years.
That's impressive, man. That's really
Yeah,
crazy.
I think we're
SDRs and
doing.
AEs, right?
Yeah, I think a couple of leadership, a CSM in there, but yeah, I think we were
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
one every 3 days is what the numbers came out to. Yeah,
That's crazy. How many like just that can like feed a recruitment company for quite a while, and that's
yeah,
just one client.
yeah, and that's where I was on a profit and loss model, which is
Mm,
great when you have a client like that. But then
yeah.
you start learning words like leverage ratio and
Hmm.
why it's dangerous to have over 80% of your business coming
From
from
one
one
client.
company. And
Yeah.
at the time, you're making more money than ever. And you're like, well, this company, you're looking at their stock, it's rising. So your stock's rising. And you're brushing off your founders and the consultant being like, everything's fine. And then it's fine until it isn't. And, and then they build the function internally. And then you have to rebuild 80% of your business.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds. Did that happen actually?
Yeah, that exact thing happened. We had some warnings, but you never have enough time because it's not real until it's real.
It's
As
there.
long as there's headcount there, it's hard to go out and do the uncomfortable thing, which is cold call, bring in new business. Where I could go find an AE for this company where I've already placed several AEs and they can give me 25% of that candidate's first year base salary and I can hit 150% of my monthly goal. So as long as that option's there, it's hard to do the alternative.
Yeah. What would you have done anything different? Like looking back.
Oh, yeah, I would have made requirements for certain outbound activities and I think been stiffer because I was more of nudging them and going into huddles and trainings, talking about it. But salespeople's job description is their compensation plan. And when the money
Mm,
is there now to go do a specific activity, it's harder to say, hey, but go do this because in a few months it'll pan out. They
yeah.
want to make as much money as possible as quick as possible. And I didn't build enough metrics and make it as mandated to do those outbound expectations and new business as I should have.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, who can blame you, man? Like you were crushing it with just that one client. I can assume there were others, but still, it was such a huge success. The first thing that comes to my mind is like, okay, how, like, what would it have taken to replicate that across like another 5 or 10 clients of that magnitude? Like,
All
would that
right.
even be possible?
$1 million question, right? Everyone
Yeah.
from our private equity firm to my parents ask me that question. How do we get five more?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can
I,
assume it was a lot of like luck and circumstance.
it it's so hard, and some staffing firms have been able to do that, but it's juggling the how do we allocate these resources to bringing in a new business versus delivering on the business. We wanted to
Yeah.
keep the quality really high because when we came in, we realized I think the bar for just recruiting is really low. And that's how I viewed it and why I said no originally. I was like, recruiters are salespeople that couldn't cut it. So they went from just talking to people who wanted to talk to them and helping them get a job. I call chief information security officers, try to steal 30 seconds of their time to earn another minute of their time to see if I can get 30 minutes of their time. And
Yeah.
these people talk to people who applied to jobs. So I had a very harsh view of recruiters, and especially my time as an SDR manager when I was always recruiting and I'd skip lunch to talk to some candidate who was like a magician. And I'd be like, why did I skip lunch to talk to this person? So the industry of recruiting was low.
Mm.
Now, that's why agency recruiting exists because the bar for recruiting is low. So these people, I think, kind of like myself, are like, oh, wait, I can go out and do these people's jobs and get paid a lot of money. It's kind of a weird industry.
Mm.
So where was I going with that? But then you have to decide, okay, how are we going to allocate, like, because it's two jobs in one. It's bringing in
Yeah.
searches to hire for and then delivering on those. In theory, once you have a search, you want everyone to deliver on it. So your time to
Yeah.
hire is there. You can be
Yeah.
really picky with the candidates you send over, and you can get more searches from them. So it's that push pull is just so hard to figure out, and having people that are willing to do the business development function but are also good recruiters, because it's two really different skill sets.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I think it's one of the hardest sales jobs out there.
Did you split it in the end, or were like was every BD rep doing both?
We There was a time where we had three dedicated folks do just the business development function, but it was hard to compensate them, because who are the three you pick? There's three top performers. So we lost our three best recruiters,
Yeah.
but we also needed the compensation to work for them enough that they were willing to make that pivot to do a harder position.
Yeah.
And then from a profit and loss standpoint, which I was on, that meant I had to take a hit because I was losing my three best billers to put them in a position that wouldn't pay dividends for a few months.
Yeah.
And it just didn't really work. And from what I've seen with these top recruiting firms, it's you have everyone's 360,
Yeah.
and some people are able to do it, others aren't. But it's too hard to be like, you're just business development, you're just
So
recruiting,
how
because
were
they're
you
tied
comping
together.
them? How were you comping them?
We were full draws with 40% commission on your billings.
Mm-hmm.
So it allowed for some really, really uncapped commissions. We had someone make over $350,000 in a year before. We had multiple people clear $200,000. And from a profit and loss standpoint, we was able to go to the team and be like, listen, the more you make, the more I make, but you need to be covering yourself so that I don't go into the hole.
Yeah.
So it was a draw, which embrace debate on draws. I think when done well, draws are an awesome compensation plan, but having to explain a draw to a 22-year-old who's also running their compensation plan by their parents is also very, very complicated, because there is a stigma with them.
So,
but yeah,
imagine if you had to explain that right now. Like, imagine I'm a 22-year-old. What would you tell me?
the concept of a draw, well, I would say, hey, you're fully commissioned, but you also likely have a college degree, so you would like to see some steady income here, because you don't know me and it's hard to take my word. So I'm going to give you $5,000 a month to cover your living expenses and whatnot. And to earn bonuses, you have to first earn $5,000 in bonuses. Every dollar after that, though, is your commission. And I explain it oftentimes like a staggered commission plan. Yes, your commission is 40%, which is 4x a lot of commission plans out there. Pretty routine, though, for agencies. Yeah. But the 40% only starts once you've made the $5,000 in commission.
Yeah. That's a very easy way to explain it. No, you have experience. So all right, so we're getting closer to the top of the hour here. I want to make sure we cover the latest role that you took on. You kind of suggested that the client, one of the clients from MemoryBlue, actually brought you in. Did I get that right?
Yeah. I initiated contact. Yeah, I had hit the 7-year mark over there, and was really thinking long-term career-wise, as I think made clear there. Agency recruitment is hard. It's relentless. The turnover is intense, because many of my folks would be hired out to their clients as well. Why give my team $25,000 a hire where you could just give this person $20,000 a month, and they can make 2 hires for you, and it's like buy one get one free. So the turnover there was brutal. And then the client churn and everything. And I was like, you know what? I think I I got some really good experience here. And I think I was just ready for something new as well. The perk of just being in this world and talking to so many salespeople, you get to see where they go and you get to see who likes it. So one of our clients, we had placed a few of our folks over there and a
Mm,
couple folks who I had actually previously managed. And you see them out, you hear from them, and they're loving things. So when I saw Assured Data Protection, my current company was looking for a commercial sales manager, I was like, this is interesting. No one's ideal of a commercial sales manager at a cybersecurity firm is some agency recruitment guy. But I had a few things going for me, internal folks that could vouch for me. And
of course.
as luck may have it, my current CEO started his career as a headhunter for 10 years. And he recognizes the grind and those sales cycles, and it's really as, hey, we could teach you the technology, the cybersecurity stuff, etc. But we want you for these skills that you've developed over the past 7 years, and these folks vouch for you. And that's sort of modern day recruiting and how to get a job. Who internally can vouch for you? That gives leadership peace of mind that it's going to limit a bad hire. And then from the candidate side, okay, if your friends don't hate it and you've worked with them before, you probably won't hate it either. So far, so good.
Yeah. I was actually hoping you were going to tell me that you kind of solved the churn problem with the BD people, but it seems like that's it seems like that's just a given for any like recruitment agency, staffing agency.
Yeah, it's tough. And ironically, I had one of the longest tenure teams at Memory Blue because once you get over a certain hump, it does work. And the agency recruitment game does give you a good work life balance and a high upside. So I had some folks that I'd worked with for over 5 years. I just attended one of their weddings, and yeah, they end up becoming lifelong friends. And it did make it really hard to leave, but thus is life.
True. All right. And so to kind of wrap it up, so right now, what is your biggest focus as I mean, how big is that company? Like where do you fit in that hierarchy? Are you one of the are you just not just, but like one of the managers, the sales managers, and then you manage like a territory or a team or a vertical? Like how does that look like? And like what are you doing right now?
Yep. Back in middle management, there's 200 or so folks at this company, and the sales team has about 12, 12, 13 folks on it. The head of sales was previously overseeing everyone, working 80-hour weeks. He brought me on to oversee the commercial sales reps. So I have 5 commercial AEs working on accounts 500 million and under, and I'm formalizing the sales process with them, building out these sales trainings, standardizing activity, running through forecasts, pipelines, and helping them get some deals across the finish line.
I love it. Wow. Okay, that's really cool, man. So if people want to hit you up, ask you a question, just follow you, do you have a place where you're kind of generating content, like, or at least that they can find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I try to post a couple times a week. Any sort of current events, sales stuff that I see. Post my thoughts, the occasional meme. I think the fun part of being in sales too is you get to laugh every day. So finding the humor in things of what's a really hard job, you have to be able to laugh. I'm a big sports guy, so I make sports analogies to sales and whatever it is.
Yeah, I think sports is actually extremely close to what sales looks like, so it's easy to make those analogies actually. And I think you know I think guys do a better job at than girls, especially with like prospects. But anyway, dude, this was a huge pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation. And is there like a message that you would like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think especially for folks starting out in sales, it's tempting to come in with a C's get degrees mentality instead of just giving it your all. And if you really go 100% and you follow what top performers do, and you actually work a full 7 hours a day with a lunch and a couple of breaks mixed in, you will have success. And the name of the game is getting out of the SDR position. And if you can do that early, because you oftentimes don't have a choice, if you learn this lesson in your second or third SDR job, it might be too late. So in that first gig, wherever you are now, give 100%, show up early, connect with top performers, connect with people in different sales adjacent departments. There's awesome careers in account management, customer success, leadership, obviously the coveted AE roles. But the name of the game is do what you need to do, get out of the SDR chair, get into a cool sales adjacent division. And 2025, it's not a bad life. We've got Netflix, we've got Uber Eats. If you could put yourself in a spot where you're making six figures in a hybrid or a remote environment at an awesome software company, that's something that if you explain to your great grandmother or grandfather, they'd probably be stunned at your quality of life. And I think that's really the beautiful part of getting into technology sales is it's a really, really badass life for a lot of folks that maybe weren't the best college students or whatever it might be, or maybe you didn't go to college. It puts you in a spot where you can make as much as doctors, lawyers, or whoever.
That's a powerful message, man. Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks so much, Bones, for coming on, for having this conversation. You did some amazing things. And so, yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks for setting
Cheers.
this up.